Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala Navamaṇimālai. Today, in continuation of the previous two meetings, I'm going to be talking about verse 4 of Aruṇācala Navamaṇimālai. As I mentioned earlier, Navamaṇimālai consists of 9 verses written each written at a different time under different circumstances. We don't know the circumstances under which Bhagavan wrote most of them, but they've been arranged in a certain way. The first 3 verses are about the greatness of Aruṇācala. Then verses 4, 5, 6, and 7 are prayers, and verses 7 and 8 are autobiographical. They are they're verses relating to Bhagavan's life, bodily life, that is. So this verse 4, this is the first of the 4 prayers in this song. What Bhagavan says, there are, I think it is, there are 4 sentences here, so I'll go through it sentence by sentence. First, I'll recite the whole verse for those who know Tamil and those who like to hear Bhagavan's words. aṇṇā malaiyuṇai ṉeṇaveṉai, aṇṇā dēṅgiḍa ṇnādē, maṇṇā malavuḍa, vahameṉa, maṇṇā māyndiḍa voṇṇādē, taṇṇā raḻiseṟi, kaṇṇā ḍorukiṟi, paṇṇā deṉṉiru kaṇṇāḻā, peṇṇā ṇaliyuru, naṇṇā voḷiyuru, aṇṇā naṇṇāyē. The first sentence is aṇṇā malaiyuṇai ṇeṇaveṉai aṇṇā dēṅgiḍa ṇnādē. What this means, the literal meaning of this is aṇṇā. Aṇṇā is the name of Aruṇācala. It's the Tamil name of Aruṇācala. aṇṇā, do not think me to pine away, looking upwards like one who has not thought of you. That's literal meaning. What it implies is, do not think of leaving me to pine away, looking upwards. Looking upwards implies, it can be taken as looking upwards with longing or looking upwards in despair, like one who has not thought of you. That is, if we think of Aruṇācala, Bhagavan has assured us in so many verses that if we think of Aruṇācala, he will annihilate ego. So if we are still pining away, longing for his grace, or in despair at our inability to turn within, if that is still our condition, we are like one who has not thought of Aruṇācala. So Bhagavan says, do not think of letting me pine away or leaving me to pine away, looking upwards with longing or in despair, like one who has not thought of you. So the implication is, if we thought of him, it's his duty to save us. Bhagavan has implied this in so many verses, and he's explained it in most detail in verse 10 of Aruṇācala Patikam, where he says, I've seen a wonder, this magnetic hill that forcibly attracts the soul. In the mind that has thought of it even once, it was still the mischievous activity of that mind. It will draw it within to face itself. I mean, to face itself in our heart as our own being, our own reality. It will make us still like itself, and then it will feed upon that ripe soul. And then he ends by saying, "Oh, souls, be saved by thinking of this great Aruṇācala that shines in the heart of the destroyer of the soul." So there are so many other verses also where Bhagavan has clearly indicated. In the second verse of this Aruṇācala Navamaṇimālai, he ends by saying, Mukti nēṇaveṇai Aruṇācala munniḍa. When one considers Aruṇācala, mere thought of which will bestow liberation. So like this, in so many verses, Bhagavan has indicated, mere thought of Aruṇācala well, we think of him only by his grace. And once he has made us think of him, he starts a process to slowly subdue the outward going activity of our mind, to draw our mind within, to face him in our heart, where he's ever shining as I. He thereby makes us still like himself, and he then feeds upon us. So if we are still pining for his grace, we are like one who has not thought of him. That's what Bhagavan is saying in this sentence. Then the next sentence, he says, Maṇṇā malavuḍa ṇeṇṇā vahameṉa maṇṇā māyndiḍa ṇaliyuru. That means it is not at all appropriate to perish as earth, thinking that the filthy body, which is earth, is I. What that implies is it's not at all appropriate for you to allow me to perish as earth. Earth here implies physical matter, thinking the filthy body, which is earth, is I. Bhagavan is always reminding us what the root cause of all our problems is. The root cause is this dehatma buddhi, this false identification, I am this body. Why is this the root cause of all problems? Because what we actually are is infinite and eternal happiness. Infinite, eternal, and immutable happiness. That is our real nature. But now somehow we seem to have mistaken ourselves to be a body. So long as we limit ourselves by mistaking ourselves to be a body, we face all sorts of problems. When we don't identify ourselves as a body, as in sleep, we are free of all problems. We're free of all misery. But when we rise as ego in waking or dream, we identify ourselves as a body and we undergo all sorts of problems. So, and so long as we take ourselves to be a body, we undergo birth and death. That's why Bhagavan says, it's not appropriate for you to allow me to perish as earth, as material matter, as physical matter, thinking that the filthy body, which is earth, is I. So he describes the body here as maṇṇā malavuḍa. Mala means mala means impurity, filth, excreta. So the body is, he's describing the body as filthy, something impure. And he describes the maṇṇā. It is composed of earth. Literally, man means earth, but it implies here physical matter. So long as we take this body to be I, we undergo birth and death and all other problems. This is not appropriate. It's not appropriate to the grace of Aruṇācala to allow us to continue in this condition, taking this filthy body to be I. So this is not these first two sentences, they're not direct prayer, but they're implied prayer. When he says, do not think of leaving me to pine away like one who has not thought of you, means you finish your job. Now I've thought of you, it's your responsibility to finish the job by annihilating me. And again, in the second sentence, it's an implied prayer. When he says it's not appropriate for you to allow me to perish as earth, thinking that the filthy body which is earth is I, it implies it's your duty to put an end to this. That is, that's the work of His grace, is to put an end to this. We've got ourselves in a mess. Only He can save us. That is the implication. The next sentence is taṇṇā raḷiseṟi kaṇṇā ḍorukiṟi paṇṇā deṉṇiru kaṇṇāḻā. Ṇeniru kan means my two eyes. Allah means the Lord, the one who has taken charge. It also means the beloved one, the beloved Lord. So ṇeniru kaṇṇāḻā means beloved Lord of my two eyes. In other words, one my eyes love to dwell upon. Ḍorukiṟi paṇṇādu means without playing any trick. Kiri means falsehood, lie, trick, fraud, deceit, mischief, playful mischief. So without playing any trick on me, without playing any mischief or deception on me, my beloved, the prayer is taṇṇā raḻiseṟi kaṇṇādu. That means, literally, it means cool, love-filled eyes look. So the implication is, may your cool, love-filled eyes look at me. So this is His eyes looking at us means the eye of His grace needs to fall upon us. We need to be blessed by His grace. That's the implication of this. That is the eyes of the Lord looking at us means His grace is falling upon us. And when He sees us, He doesn't see us as we see ourselves. He sees us as we actually are. So when He sees us as we actually are, that makes us see ourselves as we actually are. And what we actually are is He Himself. So this is all brought about by grace. It's only grace that can give us the love to turn within. So that His grace giving us the love to turn within is what is metaphorically described as His cool, love-filled eyes looking at us. So that is the prayer in this sentence. And then the last sentence is peṇṇā ṇaliyuru naṇṇāyē aṇṇā naṇṇāyē. The first part of the sentence is an address. peṇṇā ṇaliyuru naṇṇāyē aṇṇā. Aṇṇā means Lord. Voḻiyuru means form of light. So He's the Lord in the form of light. The light here means the light of awareness. And He describes that light as peṇṇā ṇaliyuru naṇṇā. That means unreached by forms of female, male, and those who are neither, meaning those who are neither male nor female. That is, Ali is a Tamil equivalent of, in Hindi they call hijra. Those who are, we can say transgender, or it's very difficult. It's since ancient times, it's been accepted in Indian culture, but there are not simply two genders. There are many people who don't neatly fall into the binary gender of male, female. There are many people who are, in one way or another, are not wholly male or wholly female. So they are what in Tamil are called Ali. So this gender, being female or male or neither, this all pertain to the body. So whether we identify ourselves as a female body or a male body, or a body that is neither wholly male nor wholly female, the one thing we all have in common, in the heart of each and every one of us, Aruṇācala is shining as in the form of light, the light of pure awareness, the light that is ever shining as I am. So if we are female, we feel I am female. If we are male, we feel I am male. If we are neither, we feel I am neither. What is common to all these different genders is I am. So that is what Bhagavan refers to here, the form of light which is not reached by the forms of female, male, and those who are neither. That means this light transcends all these gender differences. All differences are transcended. And this applies not only to human, not only humans have these different genders. In other species, there's also female, male, and those who are neither. So whatever type of body we take to be I, whether it's a human body or a non-human body, we are all aware I am. That awareness I am, the awareness of our being, that is Aruṇācala shining in our heart. So that's what Bhagavan is, a very beautiful description. Lord, form of light, who unreached by or untouched by these different gender forms. And then the prayer is aham naṇṇāyē. Aham here, that is Bhagavan. This word aham is a very favorite word of Bhagavan because it is both a Tamil word that means inside, heart, mind, or home, and it's also the first person pronoun in Sanskrit. Also in Sanskrit it means I. So Bhagavan often uses it with a double meaning. But here the principal meaning in this context, when he says aham, that means my heart. Naṇṇāyē, may you abide. Naṇṇā means may you be, may you reside, may you abide. It's an optative, so may you abide in my heart. That's the final prayer. So the two explicit prayers in this song are in these last two sentences. In the second last sentence, the prayer is for him to look at us, and the final prayer is for him to abide in our heart. But the implicit prayers are in the first two sentences. The first sentence, it's not appropriate for him to leave us like one who has not thought of him. That is, he's made us think of him, so it's his duty to finish the job he started. And the job he started is to root out this false identification, I am this body. So it's not at all appropriate for him to leave us in this condition, taking this body to be I. So again, that's an implicit prayer. And how does he remove this false identification? By looking at us with his love-filled eyes. When his love-filled eyes look at us, that turns our attention back within to look at him where he's ever shining in our heart as that form of light which is untouched by all these gender differences. So this is a very, very beautiful prayer. That is these verses of well, this applies to all the verses of Aruṇācala Stuti Panchakam, the 5 hymns that Bhagavan composed on Aruṇācala. We can meditate on these prayers, and the more we meditate on them, the more we see the clarity of Bhagavan's teachings, the love that is in these verses. Bhagavan is expressing his love for Aruṇācala. Not only for the external form of Aruṇācala, but the Swarupa of Aruṇācala, the real form of Aruṇācala, which is what is ever shining in our heart as I. So the more we meditate on these prayers, the more we are drawn in, so to speak, by Bhagavan's love, and the love that he had for Aruṇācala, that same love will be kindled in our heart. And thus we will gain more and more love to turn within, to see Aruṇācala as it actually is, ever shining in our heart as I. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala Navamaṇimālai.
So the question is, I've been watching David Godman's video series on Tales from Palakuttu. In the last video of the series, David narrates the story of Lakshman Swami. The story is a typical one that I have heard growing up. A saint sits down and meditates on God or Guru, chanting his name without eating or sleeping. And one day he becomes enlightened. Such stories have been a turn-off for me since childhood, as they set the bar so high and made enlightenment a privilege reserved for a select few, of which I wasn't going to be one. All that changed after I started learning Advaita philosophy, and especially after coming across Michael's talks. Admittedly, progress has been slow for me. Listening to David Godman's video about Lakshman Swami brings back doubts. What are your thoughts on David's narrative?
Well, I haven't watched both videos myself, so I don't know exactly what he said, but I've heard about this Lakshman Swami, but he has a certain story about how he attained enlightenment. So I can just talk about that in general terms. I am always skeptical when I hear someone telling how I got enlightened, because that implies that but what gets enlightened is ego or the I. That seems to me to be a very profound misunderstanding of Bhagavan's teachings. There is no such thing as a self-realized person. Self-realization is, it's not that we as a person are going to get self-realized. The person that we take ourselves to be is not what we actually are. That which takes this person to be I is ego. So long as we rise as ego, we take ourselves to be a person, to be a body. And so we have a story that we can tell about our life, because we take the life of this body to be our life. When we follow Bhagavan's path and turn within, this I that now identifies itself as I am this person is thereby consumed in the light of pure awareness. And what knows itself is what always knows itself, namely ourself as we actually are. That is what we actually are, always is aware of itself as it actually is, because what we actually are is pure being awareness, Sat-Chit. Sat-Chit, by just being Sat-Chit, we know what we actually, I mean, because our very being is awareness, and because awareness always knows itself, just by being what we actually are, we know ourselves. So there's never a moment when we don't know ourselves. The problem is when we rise as ego, we know ourselves as something other than what we actually are. That is, as ego, we don't cease to be aware I am. But instead of being aware just I am, we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, I am a person. So what is called enlightenment or self-realization or whatever is nothing but the annihilation of ego. When ego is annihilated, then there's no I remaining to say how I got enlightened. That is why in verse 33 of Ulladu Bhagavan says, saying I do not know myself, or I have known myself, is ground for ridicule. Why? To make oneself an object, are there two selves? Because being one is the truth, the experience of everyone. So for Bhagavan, it is equally ridiculous to say, I do not know myself, or to say I have known myself. Because there, that is self-awareness, self-knowledge is our very nature. Now that, so long as we rise as ego, that we don't cease to be aware of us, to know ourselves, but we know ourselves as something other than what we actually are. So all that is necessary is to remove that false awareness. When that false awareness is removed, what remains is what we always actually are. And what we always actually are is ever aware of itself as it actually is. So it's not, Bhagavan often used to say, jnana is not a new knowledge to be attained. If it were a new knowledge to be attained, what is attained will be lost. Whatever comes has to go. But jnana is eternal. Jnana is our real nature. It's just seemingly obscured by our rising as ego and taking ourselves to be a body. When this false awareness is removed, what remains is the real awareness, the pure jnana, which is what we always actually are. So it's not that ego knows itself. By knowing itself, ego is thereby destroyed. So ego can never know itself. We cannot be ego and know what we actually are. When we know what we actually are, we cease to be ego. So it's not ego that knows itself, much less is it the person who knows themselves. So earlier I said there's no such thing as a self-realized person. Because it's a contradiction in terms. To be a person and to be self-realized is a contradiction. Being self-realized means we know what we actually are, which means we know we're not a person. And what knows what it actually is what always knows what it actually is. It's not the person who knows what they actually are. However, though the jnani is not a person, in the view of the ajnani, in other words, in our view, the jnani may seem to be a person, like Bhagavan. Bhagavan is not a person, but he seems to us to be a person. He seems to have a body, to have a life story, and to have given all these teachings and everything. But Bhagavan said, all this is true only in the view of the ajnani, not in the view of the jnani. In the view of the jnani, there is no body, no world, nothing. There is just pure being. So it is by the what we actually are is that is the nature of our real nature is infinite love. So Bhagavan is that infinite love that we actually are. Why his love is infinite? Because he has infinite love for himself, and he knows us as himself. That is, when Bhagavan sees us, he doesn't see us as the person we see ourselves to be. He sees us as we actually are. So he loves us as himself. Because he sees us as himself, he loves us as himself. And that infinite love that he has for us as himself is what we experience as grace. So it is by grace that he, in our view, he appears outwardly in the form of a person to give us these teachings in order to tell us to turn within. As Bhagavan often used to say, the reason the Guru appears outwardly in human form is because of our attention is turned outwards. We need something outside to tell us to turn within. So out of his grace, out of his infinite love for us, Bhagavan appears outwardly in the form of a person to give us these teachings. But in his experience, he is never that person. He is always just the pure being awareness. He's always our own reality. So when people say, I did so much japa, I did so much this, I did so much self-inquiry, finally I came to know myself, that is not how it is. It doesn't happen like that. That is whatever does all the japa or the self-inquiry or whatever is consumed in the process. Well, we won't be consumed just by doing japa, but eventually, whatever sadhana we may do, we eventually get drawn to this path of self-investigation. Self-investigation means turning within. When we turn within, we thereby subside and dissolve back into our source. So the result of self-investigation is the dissolution of ego. It's not that ego comes to know itself. I know myself. That's why Bhagavan says, to say I have known myself is as ridiculous as to say I do not know myself. We always know ourselves, but we now know ourselves as something other than what we actually are. When this false awareness is removed, what remains is the real awareness, which is what we always actually are. Bhagavan also hints at the same thing in verse 2 of Aruṇācala Ashtakam. What he says in verse 2 of Aruṇācala Ashtakam is, in the first sentence he says, ṇeṇaveṉai karutiruṇādē, ṇindraru kandein. When investigating within the mind who the seer is, I saw what remained when the seer thereby became non-existent. Thereby is not there, actually, I added. I saw what remained when the seer became non-existent. One important thing to notice here, Bhagavan, one thing I've heard about Lakshman Swami, he describes that if you follow this path of self-investigation, you will eventually see the I thought disappear. That is not at all according to Bhagavan's teachings, because the I thought means ego. Who is to see ego disappear? Ego cannot see ego disappear, obviously. And what we actually are, our real nature, Atma-swarupa, in the view of Atma-swarupa, there is never any such thing as ego, because ego is the false awareness, I am this body. So to see the ego disappear is impossible, because neither can ego see itself disappear, because when it disappears, it's not there to see it, and nor can Atma-swarupa see ego disappear, because in the view of Atma-swarupa, there never was any such thing as ego in the first place. So what Bhagavan says here, he doesn't say, I saw the seer become non-existent. He said, I saw what remained when the seer became non-existent. So what remains when the seer becomes non-existent is only the underlying reality of the seer. In other words, Atma-swarupa, the pure awareness. So what sees that pure awareness? Only pure awareness can see it. So this is Bhagavan's wordings are very, very. If we pay close attention to them, if we understand what he's saying, it's something very, very subtle, but he's saying it very clearly. So he doesn't even say when I investigated. He simply says. Nada. Nada means when investigating. When investigating within the mind who the seer is, I saw what remained when the seer became non-existent. So when the seer became non-existent, what remains is only pure satchit, pure being awareness. So what sees that pure being awareness? Only that pure being awareness. And then he goes on to say, in the next sentence, ṇeṇaveṉai karutu eravillai. That means the mind does not rise to say, I saw. Kandilan endrida karuterumarin. So in what way could the mind rise to say, I did not see? This is exactly what Bhagavan is saying in that verse 33 of Ulladu. It's ridiculous to say either I know myself or I do not know myself. Because there's no I in that state, either to say I saw or to say I did not see. And then he goes on very beautifully he said, he uses a word, vindu. Vindu literally means to open, like a flower blossoming. But vindu by extension, it means to open the mouth to speak. There's a beautiful saying in Tamil, Kandavam vindile, vindavam kandile. That means those who have seen do not say. Those who say have not seen. In other words, those who have realized themselves don't say, I have realized myself. Those who have realized themselves, there's no I there to say, I have realized myself. So here Bhagavan is alluding to that Tamil saying, those who have seen do not say, those who say have not seen. He's alluding to it because he's using the same words in the same context. So that's why he says it's ridiculous to say I've seen, because if we've really seen, there's no I to rise to say I have seen. So what he says in this third sentence is, or fourth sentence is, who has the power to elucidate this by speaking, when in ancient times you elucidated without speaking? What that is indirectly a reference to Aruṇācala appearing in the form of Dakshinamurti, the silent teacher. So Dakshinamurti revealed the truth to the Sanakadi rishis through silence, because words cannot adequately convey this. Because what is the nature of pure being awareness? It is infinite silence, eternal silence. So silence can be revealed only by silence. So the ultimate truth can be revealed not by words, but only by silence. Silence means the state where ego subsides and pure being awareness, Satchit, alone remains. So who has the power to elucidate this by speaking, when in ancient times, implication, even you as Dakshinamurti elucidated it without speaking? And then in the final sentence, he says, only to elucidate your state without speaking, you stood as a hill shining from earth to sky. That implies only to elucidate your state of silence, of silent and motionless pure awareness without speaking, you stood as a hill, or you stood motionlessly shining from earth to sky. Though actually beyond the limits of both. So Bhagavan is very, very clear. When we know what we actually are, there'll be no I there to rise and say, I have known myself. So if anyone says, I have known myself, it is ground for ridicule. In this context, some people say, no, but hasn't even Murugan said in so many verses that he had attained self-realization? That is a complete misunderstanding of Murugan. What Murugan is, in Murugan's thousands and thousands of verses, he's writing about one thing and one thing alone. That is about Bhagavan's grace. So what he says with respect to himself is that his grace took this lowly creature, this worthless creature, and swallowed it. That's all Murugan is saying. The implication obviously is that he knew that when we have swallowed, what remains is ṇeṇā. But he didn't say, I attain ṇeṇā. And he doesn't tell any personal story. I did japa for so many days. And then he said, what did I do? I didn't do anything. He just came and he swallowed me. So the way Murugan expresses it is something completely different to what Lakshman Swami is saying. Lakshman Swami is saying, I did this, I did that, and then I got this. There's I is so much there. So that itself gives us lots of room for doubt. Let's say we are not here to judge about others, but in the light of Bhagavan's teachings, let's say Bhagavan's teachings, what Bhagavan says in this second verse of Aruṇācala and in verse 33 of Ulladu Napadu, and what is implicit in so many other teachings of Bhagavan, gives us very, very strong grounds to seriously doubt what Lakshmana Swami and people like that claim. People who say, I have attained enlightenment, I did this and I got that. That's just not how it is. How Murugan describes it is beautiful. He came and swallowed me. That's all I know. And Sadhuam has expressed it beautifully. There's one of Sadhuam's work is Ramana Sahasram. That's 1,000 verses praying for jnana. And towards the end of that work, he says, there's one verse in which he says, did I see or did I not see? I don't know. He alone knows. That is, there'll be no I there to say, either I have known myself or I have not known myself. That is, that I is completely devoured by him. What remains is that pure awareness alone. So what knows pure awareness is only pure awareness. That's why Bhagavan often used to say, ṇeṇaveṇai jnani. That means jnana alone is the jnani. Jnana means pure awareness. What jnani means what knows pure awareness. So what knows pure awareness is only pure awareness. Pure awareness cannot be known by any other thing. Pure awareness cannot be an object of awareness. So we know ourselves just by being ourselves, as Bhagavan says. In verse 26 of Upadesha Taṇṇā iritale taṇṇā aridalam. Being oneself is knowing oneself. And what does being oneself means? As he describes in verse 27 of Ulutunapadu, Nanu diada ullanilai, namadubai ullanilai. The state in which I is without rising is the state in which we are that. That means that being as we actually are, being ourselves, means not rising as ego. When we don't rise as ego, then who is there to say, I have realized myself or I have not realized myself? The very fact that we say, either I have realized myself or I have not realized myself, both mean there's an I there, there's an ego there to say that. That's why Bhagavan says it's to say I have known myself is as ridiculous as to say I have not known myself. So I hope that's an adequate answer to that question. I think, in summary, I would have very, very grave doubts about people, anyone who claims I have realized myself. I have done this and I got this.
Michael, I was just, it just occurred to me that certain sort of siddhas, like Kabir and so on, they always speak of themselves in the third person, that Kabira says or whatever it is.
Yes.
This way. And I was just wondering if you'd like to sort of comment on that at all.
Yes. As Bhagavan said, there's no I. That is, once we've been swallowed by grace, who is there to rise and say, I have done anything? And not only do many great saints refer to themselves in the third person, they also, their tone is not at all boastful. I did this and I got this. It's all this worthless creature, this worthless dog who was roaming about the streets was somehow picked up and saved by him. So it's all very self-deprecating. That is the true sign of the true, as Sadhu Om often used to say, humility is the true, humility is divinity. Where there's no I to rise to say, I have known this or I haven't known this, or there's no I even to be humble. That state of pure humility, that alone is divinity. Because we can also sometimes be, it's very easy to be artificially self-deprecating. Oh, I'm so humble, but so long as there's an I, the whole problem is this I. There shouldn't be an I to rise, even to be humble. That is true humility.
Thank you, Michael. That was really beautiful. So the questions, the first one is, I wonder if Michael would speak on this quote from Vishwanath Swami, who first came to stay with Bhagwan Śrī Ramana Maharshi when he was about 19 years old. His father, Ramaswami Iyer, was a first cousin of Bhagwan. Vishwanath Swami wrote about his mother in the following way. He said, undisturbed, unruffled, inner serenity under all the changing circumstances of life is the greatest asset an intelligent person would care for. Bhagwan has opened our eyes to the great fact of life, that unruffled serenity, Shanti, is our very nature, and that all disturbing waves are only the surface, and that they also are nothing but the reality, when viewed from the heart, the ultimate source of everything. Understanding is beyond thought, and so is real love or devotion.
Well, that says it all. What more can we say? Yeah. Words fail. Words cannot describe silence. Silence is beyond words. That absolute serenity is the state in which I does not rise. Shalini, your mic is...
Sorry, Michael. No, what I was just saying is that I just could not break myself to break the silence after you said that.
Okay, right.
That is what happened.
Yeah.
It was just very, it happened sometimes. So this is, so that's a practical question for Michael. It says, do you still have a donation page somewhere on your site? Because I can't find it.
No, I removed it a couple of years ago. People do still kindly support me, but I always felt awkward about having a donation button there. Bhagavan provides through the kindness and generosity of friends. So if people contact me, then I can give details, but I don't like to advertise any need. Bhagavan is somehow provides what is needed in one way or another through the kindness of and generosity of various friends.
So, Michael, if somebody would like to simply contribute, then they should get in touch with you by email.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. The next question is, how do we do Atma-vichara in the real world? I know you might say we should do this all the time. For beginners, do you recommend doing this at a particular time in the day and slowly make it a part of everyday activity?
Right. Bhagavan never prescribed how we should do it. Bhagavan said what we should do. We should try to turn our mind within. And Bhagavan often used words like always. When he defined what he meant by Atma-vichara, he said, Sarakalamam manate Atma-vichara in the 16th paragraph of ṇeṇṇā. That means always, perpetually keeping the mind on oneself. In other words, keeping our attention fixed on ourselves. And he talks in the 11th paragraph, he says, Odvun tan sarupa medayam varil, nirantara swarupa smarane kai patravanayan adondre podam. That means until one attains one's real nature, if one clings firmly to uninterrupted, unbroken self-remembrance, that alone is sufficient. So Bhagavan often emphasizes always. But obviously Bhagavan knows our inability to do it always. That is what we should aim for. So Bhagavan didn't prescribe you should how we should do it. Bhagavan described this path as vichara. Vichara means investigation. So we find the way, that is, when you undertake an investigation, at first the way isn't clear, but as you begin investigating, the way becomes clearer and clearer. So when we try to apply what Bhagavan has said, most of us at first, we can only attend to ourselves at best for a few moments at a time. I mean, somehow our attention is diverted away, and again we have to bring it back to ourselves. Bhagavan acknowledges this fact very clearly in the 6th paragraph of ṇeṇaveṉai, when he says, what's it matter however many thoughts arise? As and when each thought arises, it's necessary to investigate to whom it's arisen. Investigating to whom it's arisen means turning our attention away from whatever has appeared, back towards ourselves, the one to whom it's appeared. So, and then once we've turned our attention back, we try to hold on to that self-attentiveness. But again, it will slip away. Again, our attention will be diverted towards other things. And again, we have to turn it back. This is the process we all have to undergo. So we have to try to do this in what that is, we have to do. We each have to find out what works best for us. Some people find it useful setting some time aside morning and evening, or whenever in the day they have a little spare time, to try and devote their time to this. Whatever we find most helpful for us is, we should do that. I mean, it can't be prescribed. However, one clue Sadhu Om gave is, if we want to be successful in this, more important when trying for long hours at a stretch to hold on to self-attentiveness, when we almost certainly fail, it's better to make frequent, intermittent attempts. Try and hold on to that self-attentiveness. When it slips away, try again, and after some time you relax. Read one of Bhagavan's books, or think about his teachings or something, and when you again get the enthusiasm, again try. Because if we are constantly, he used the analogy, if you've got a pressure scale, if you're asked to press your thumb on a pressure scale, if you try to keep up the pressure for a long time, slowly, the pressure will reduce, but you can't keep up the same. But if you relax and then push again, the renewed pressure will be greater than trying to sustain the pressure for a long time. So these are just clues how we can apply it in our life. But ultimately, we each have to find what works best for us. What is most important is that we attend to ourselves as much as possible. How we do so, we each have to find out for ourselves. So if you I mean, it's all experimentation. If you think it's a good idea to sit 20 minutes morning and evening, give it a try. If you find it works, well and good. If you find it doesn't work so well, don't be dejected. Just try it any time.
There's someone who'd like to ask a question. Name is Vartist. Sahakya.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. My question, Michael, was concerning when we say that as we rise as an ego, the world arises.
Yes.
I have been struggling to like digest that. For example, I can digest that, yes, I experience the world within myself as the senses get triggered and this experience is created in the mind, and I can see a laptop, I can see a world around the laptop. Maybe that part I can get, that yes, it's happening within me as the senses construct that experience, but to doubt that the world exists into actually like you, that I see you, that the very idea Bhagavan, everything, this planet, the history of humanity, everything, scientific discoveries, all of that is arising just as I arise as ego, that in reality it never ever happened, is hard to digest. I'm just wondering if you can,
Yeah,
what do you think?
it is hard generally for most of us to accept this, but if we think about it, supposing we were having this conversation in a dream, you would be asking exactly the same question, because while you're dreaming, the dream seems so real. How can all this, all this history, all this science, all this, how can all this be just in my own mind? You may ask. It may seem impossible, but then next minute you wake up and you realize, yes, it actually was all in your own mind. One useful thing to consider, is there anything in our present state, but are we experiencing anything in our present state, but we could not experience in dream?
Well, in dream, I don't experience this feeling of I exist. It is as if it's like they're events, but I cannot I cannot ask myself, do I exist, and check if it's true or not. In dream, I don't have that ever happen to me. But here I can check, do I exist? And there is this knowing, yeah, I exist.
But if you did in sleep, I'm sorry, in dream, if you did ask yourself, do I exist? And were to think about it in dream, it would seem very obvious to you, yes, I do exist. And it would seem equally obvious to you, I am this body. Just as much as we now feel this present body is, just as we experience this present body as I, in dream we experience that dream body as I. If we're in some precarious position, if we're, say, on the edge of a cliff, and we're trying to climb up to safety, we feel as afraid in a dream as we would in the waking state, because we are so strongly identified with that body. And everything that we experience in this waking state, we also experience in dream. In dream, we have memories. We remember our childhood. We remember what we learned at school. We remember about science. We remember about history, politics, all these things. We can remember all these things in dream. So while we're dreaming, we seem to be awake. From the perspective of a waking state, sometimes we wake up from a dream and say, oh, that's all impossible, because 1 minute I was in one place and suddenly I was in some other place. But while we're actually in that dream, it seems so real to us. Why does the dream seem so real so long as we are dreaming? And how are we able to recognize that it was a dream as soon as we wake up? The reason is, what is actually real is only ourself. So long as we identify ourselves as a body, the body seems to be real. And because the body is a part of the world, the whole world seems to be real. So as long as we are dreaming, we seem to be a body in that dream. So that body seems to us to be real. So the whole world seems to be real. But as soon as we wake up, our identification is transferred from that dream body to this body. And once we're able to see clearly, that was all just a dream, it wasn't real. But while we were dreaming, it seemed to be so real.
But then if it's so, could you say why is that over the billions of people on this planet, when everyone rises and identifies with a body and a world appears to them, it is such a commonly shared understanding of what the world is? Like, there is the planet, there are the stars. I mean, throughout history, people have been rising and identifying the world in a very objectively repeatable way. If it was so arbitrary, why didn't everyone see completely something else so we could say it's really imagination?
Okay. Consider if you were asking this question in a dream. You would say to me in a dream, you are seeing the same world as me. Don't you see this laptop? Don't you see this? Don't you see that? I'll say, yes, I see it all. You ask any person in your dream, they'll tell you they're seeing the same world. No one's going to tell you, no, I see a completely different world. Everyone in your dream will tell you, I see exactly the same world. And it seems so real to you, but those are real people and they're really seeing things. But when you wake up, then you realize the whole dream world was only in the view of the dreamer. You are the dreamer.
I agree with this. I have seen this happen in my dream and I understood that. But then in that case, who are you? Like, who am I talking to? Like, this is whole happening in my dream. I'm right now experiencing my own creations in my mind, but you are not experiencing yourself as my imagination, right?
But while you're dreaming, all those other people you see in your dream seem to be just as real as all the people seem to be. If you tell someone in a dream, or you're just my dream creation, they're not going to appreciate it. They'll say, what nonsense you're talking.
Yeah.
We just have to think about these things carefully. The reason, but we also need to understand why Bhagavan teaches us these things. Because so long as we take this world to be real, so long as we take it to have an independent existence, we will have desire for it and attachment to it. So it is to help us to give up our desire and attachment for these things. And the root attachment is the attachment to this body as I. So long as we take this body to be I, all this seems to be so real. Because we are so strongly attached to this body, we are unwilling to accept that all this is just our own dream. So it is, when we say, oh, it's obvious this world exists independent of my, it's not at all obvious, but we want to think it's obvious. It's wishful thinking. There's no evidence in our experience that can prove to us that our present state is anything but a dream.
But isn't it funny, like when you check your inner experience, do you experience yourself as like to be a character in my imagination? You feel like you're real. Then I'm real. Then who is this talking to whom? Like, we are talking to ourselves.
Do you experience just one awareness?
Yeah.
Your awareness is now identified with a particular body. Because you, as awareness, identify yourself with the body, you identify every other body with awareness. So you think, oh, Michael is aware, all these people are aware. But it's all in your mind. You can neither prove nor disprove to yourself that Michael is aware of anything. I may say, oh, I'm aware of this, everything that you're aware of, but someone in a dream will also say the same to you. So what is required is that we think deeply about these things, and that we not only understand why Bhagavan has said this, not only understand what it is Bhagavan is saying, but why he has said this. The sole aim of all of Bhagavan's teachings is to get us to turn our attention within. Why we are reluctant to turn our attention within, because we have so much desire and attachment for things other than ourselves. And why we have desire and attachment for them? Because we take them to be real.
Can you tell me just last thing, Michael? I was thinking like, okay, I will put all the attention, everything will disappear. But then I'm like, but is it good to have everything disappear? Like, look at how wonderful it is, this world, even as it is. Why would I want everything to disappear?
It's so wonderful, isn't it? There's so many wars, so many famines, so many diseases.
No, let's not say the word.
Everyone who is born is one day going to die. What a wonderful world. What a wonderful life we have.
No, but if it's just disappear, why? Why would we want everything to disappear?
Because so long as it appears, we face problems. We face disease, we face death, we face financial difficulties, we face relationship difficulties, we face wars, we face disease, we face famine, we face all these things. Isn't it better to be free of all these things than just simply happy?
But I would like to have also tasted the good things. Okay, there are bad things, but to take away everything means to also take away the good. Why have nothing left? Zero.
Because the good and bad always go together. You can't have good without bad. So if you want to be free of everything that is bad, you need to give up everything that you consider good. And that is the supreme good, the good that is beyond this duality of good and bad. But one thing, nobody is forcing anyone to believe this. No one is forcing anyone to accept this. But we all reach a time in the course of our, not this necessarily this life, but over the course of so many lives, we are constantly seeking happiness in things outside ourselves, things other than ourselves. And we are constantly being disappointed. We always think, if my circumstances were better, if I had more money, I'd be happy. If I had better relationships, I'd be happier. If I was healthier, I'd be happier. If I was younger, I'd be happier. If I was this, we always look for happiness in something other than ourselves. But what Bhagavan tells us, you will never be satisfied. Whatever happiness you may seem to derive from anything, it's all fleeting, none of it lasts. But if you know yourself, you will find yourself to be infinite and eternal and immutable happiness. Bhagavan sometimes used to say, people's reluctance to surrender completely is like a poor person who has just a quarter paisa, the smallest coin available in those days. Someone has a quarter paisa who is asked to surrender that and offered all the wealth in the world, and they hold on to the quarter paisa. No, I'm not going to let go of my quarter paisa. Because we're attached to all these petty things, the so-called good things of life, which are actually extremely petty, extremely fleeting. Because of our attachment to these things, we are not ready to let go, and so we are not we are denying ourselves the opportunity to know and to be the infinite happiness that we actually are.
But would you like the planet to disappear? Let's forget humans. There's so much beautiful nature in the universe. Why would that be good for that not to exist?
Yeah.
If I had to exist for that alone to exist, I would just be here, just so that the planet could exist.
But think of how nature works. Nature works on, it's the same, life, birth and death. Every plant is born and dies. In spring, we get beautiful flowers. Within a few weeks, those flowers fade. Everything is transitory. Everything is passing. And even what we call beauty is it's our evaluation of things. Things we like, we say they're beautiful, they're good. Things we don't like, they're ugly, they're bad. It's our own mind that superimposes. There's neither good nor bad in the world. Why do we consider wars to be bad? Because we don't like wars. We don't like people being killed meaninglessly. But that's our value judgment. It's just the way it is. Wars happen, and they've been happening from time immemorial. Diseases happen, death happens, everything, all these things. It's just the nature of embodied existence. Embodied existence is inherently, whatever beauty we may see in it, it's the beauty we see in it is very transitory, very fleeting. None of it lasts. And along with all the beauty, there's all the ugliness. Along with all the good, there's all the bad. So it's up to us. There's no compulsion. But sooner or later, each one of us will come to the conclusion, this just isn't worth it. None of us can be satisfied by anything less than infinite and eternal happiness. And we cannot find this infinite eternal happiness in any of the things of the world. We can find it only within ourselves.
I would be happy with that as long as there would have been possibility that this world actually exists. I am maybe beyond it, but that nothing ever existed, that all of this is all my dream, and I am some god that is in his dream dreaming up a world and universe. That is hard, like, to digest.
Even that is not true. There is
No.
only infinite happiness. There never was any dream. It's only now we seem to be dreaming. We seem to be enjoying and suffering in this world in equal measure. But ultimately, all this is unreal. None of it actually ever happened. But it's up to us. There's no compulsion. So long as we think this samsara is something of value, samsara means this embodied existence is something of value, then we can go on enjoying it for any number of lives. It'll go on and on until finally we've had enough and we're willing to surrender. So Bhagavan's path is for those of us who have had enough, or even if we haven't had enough, we realize that we should understand that enough is enough. But we're never going to get what we are all seeking, which is infinite and eternal happiness. Nothing short of infinite and eternal happiness will ever satisfy us. Whatever satisfaction we experience is very fleeting.
But we see Bhagavan and other enlightened beings, and when they talk to us, it feels like there is a way to be free and still be in this world. And you're saying that also is never happened.
That also never happened. Because what Bhagavan actually is not the person we see him to be.
But it's okay. He can be something else, but have a body and be able to speak through it. And that also is not something that happened.
Bhagavan never has a body. Because Bhagavan is, how can the infinite be limited within that which is finite?
Well, if you pour a cup of water and drink it, it comes from the ocean. It's still an ocean inside a body. In a cup, it's fine.
Well, if you're satisfied with things the way they are, fine, you can continue. But sooner or later, this satisfaction, none of us are satisfied. And when we finally recognize that we will not ever get the satisfaction that we are seeking, so long as we experience ourselves as a body, we will finally be willing to give up this false identification. Once we give up this false identification, let's wait till then. Once we give up the false identification, let's see then whether there's any world.
I think that I think that's quite true, what this last sentence. And I very much sympathize with what Bartist is saying.
Yeah.
I just wanted to...
I think we all sympathize, but that's
Yes.
why Bhagavan is trying to get us to look deeper. Bhagavan is trying to wake us up from our slumber.
Yes, but I wonder why that one of the things which is there in Shankara is there in which he actually gets from the Buddhists and so on, and there's a sort of a reason for it. and this would kind of address this, what this is saying, that although ultimately there is only a kind of ultimate truth, the
Yes.
paramartha, whatever you want to call it, yes. However, as long as there is an identification with the body, and as long as there is even that hint of stickiness with the body, even for whatever, as long as there is a relative truth, there is a relative world. It's a conventional world, it's a fabrication. In the midst of all this space and time, which which is fabricated within consciousness energy, what I want to call it, in which a world exists, it is there. And as long as one is happy to go along with it, as you're saying, with that, with the sort of identification with particular traits and qualities which comprise the ego, and that there will be certain objects, and it'll be a commonality. One of the things which struck me when Vartis raised this question about why is there a common agreement, because insofar as we can say that there is an arising of a world of experience for us as individuals, there is only because as you've said very often, it is the ego which arises, which means that there is a certain cognitive world which arises. There is a subject, and a subject must have an object, right, because of that identification. But because there is only that, but there is a kind of interlinked or one fabricated consciousness, so to speak, that itself is the basis of whatever agreement or disagreement would be arising in it. Would that be true in a sense? Because
yeah, that is. And Bhagavan emphasized the root is ego. We rise as ego, and when we rise as ego, we take ourselves to be a body. So because we experience this body as I, it seems to us that every other body is an ego. There's an I in every other body. That is all a reflection of the ego in ourselves. In dream, we see so many people, we have conversations with people. So long as we're dreaming, those people seem to be just as real as all the people we see in this waking state.
Perhaps another way.
But the one important thing to understand is, in a dream, not only are all those other people we see in the dream unreal, the person we take ourselves to be is unreal. That is the really important thing to understand. Because if I think, oh, all these other people are unreal, I alone am real, and I take myself to be this person, that is where solipsism goes wrong. And I begin to think, oh, I'm the only one who matters. So that is a complete misunderstanding. When it is said that all the people we experience are just as unreal as the people we experience we see in a dream, that applies to the person we take ourselves to be. That is, this person is no more real than any other person. So the whole aim of when Bhagavan emphasizes this about one ego, it is not to in any way privilege the person this ego takes itself to be. It is for the... Wait a second, sorry.
The unreality of Tesco's.
Yes, this is what I mean. I mean, the relative and the conventional fabricated world.
I've been reflecting recently on there's been the analogy of the horizon, okay, and we want to get to the horizon, right? But when you constantly are going to the horizon, let's bring it back to railroad tracks. Railroad tracks are parallel, right? And they continue through infinity, okay? But because we have chosen body identification, the appearance, the illusion of convergence is always going to happen.
Sorry about that.
Oh, here he's back. So let him continue.
Sorry, Shalini, you were saying?
Yeah, I was just saying that another way in which this is often put is that whatever it is that we take to be, as you say, real. I mean, when we identify the body as real in terms of our thoughts, our feelings, our form, our appearance, and so on, and whatever it is. Whatever it is that we grasp and take to be I, it is whatever we sort of solidify or substantialize, take to be real, to exist.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, that through this kind of knowing, there is a sense of being, of existence.
Yeah.
But the kinds of things which we take to be real depends on what it is that we grasp in the first place. Like sort of what we grasp as this individual, because even in my world or any world or whatever it is, not everything arises as a substantial object, as a part of reality. I mean, it's the reason why, for example, the bat has a different world of experience from what I have, and I have a somewhat different experience from what Sanjay or Steve or Bruce or Mugli or Michael or whoever has. So it's this whole mode of grasping, which is of substantializing. It seems like a substance,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And then that has its connections, because that becomes the subject, which will then have a corresponding object, because it's splitting something which is not splittable really into two in some kind of a way. I don't know, whatever the way that is a fabrication. So that's what I was just thinking of. And then, of course, yeah.
That is what I was saying earlier. Why does a dream seem so real so long as we're dreaming? Because what is actually real is only ourself. In a dream, we identify a dream body as ourself. So because we are real, if that dream body is ourself, then the dream body is real. So that's why the body, whatever body we identify as I, always seems to us to be real. And since that body is a small part of this vast universe, the whole vast universe seems to be real. So that's why Bhagavan is always emphasizing the root problem is ego. And ego is nothing but this false identification, I am this body.
And for example, when I begin to when I love, surrender, or another way, when I immerse myself or identify myself with Bhagwan or with someone who is a Gyani, to put it very kind of crude sort of a way, then of course there is nothing there to hang on to really. I mean, except to my own mind. So if I really submerge myself in it, then of course that subject object, that set of identifications, that particular world of experience becomes more and more illusory, more and more insubstantial. Because it's not I mean, this particular kind of bubble sort of a thing is there in a way, but it no longer has that individual grip as it, that individuated grip, shall we say, that it had before. I think something like,
because the purpose of the appearance of the jnani, or the guru, in human name and form, is not to attach us, is not for us to attach ourselves to that form. That is, the true guru will not say, come to me, I will give you enlightenment. The true guru will say, see yourself, see that you're always enlightened. So the function of the outward form of Bhagavan is to turn us within. But so long as our mind is going outwards, naturally we have love for that form of Bhagavan, because he's given us these wonderful teachings, and we all know Bhagavan is the embodiment of love and kindness and everything. So we're all naturally attracted to that outward form of Bhagavan, but that outward form is constantly reminding us, I am that which is shining in you as I. Turn within and know me as I know myself.
Michael, there's something which I just want to share. many years ago, there was a Tibetan Buddhist text which somebody just told me something, there was
Yeah.
and one of their masters, one of their great masters, he sort of said at the end of it, because there is, this whole idea of shunyata or emptiness, but of course that is empty awareness. It's awareness which is empty of any content and that kind of thing, or whatever you want to call it. And he said that the mantra of the Buddha is aham. That was, I mean, that's a very nice kind of way of sort of, anyway.
Yeah. That's what Bhagavan used to say. The first name of God is I.
Yeah.
Even Om is second to it. Bhagavan said, I is the elder brother, Om is the younger brother.
So we
Thank
have
you.
a lot of questions now.
Yeah.
And
I'll try and be quick.
so the first one is, why did Bhagavan place such attention on what is more of a metaphor for Swarupa than that which it actually is? Why use a material manifestation to point to an infinite reality? I think the reference here is to Aruṇācala
Yeah.
Correct.
as an elucidation.
Yeah. Okay. In verse 4 of Ulladu Bhagavan says, if one's self is a form, the world and God will be likewise. We cannot experience God as formless so long as we experience ourselves as a form. So long as our mind is going outwards, it is appropriate to take a name or form as God and to worship that. But the reality of in whatever name or form God can appear in any name or form. In the name and form of Bhagavan, in the name and form of Aruṇācala, in the name and form of Krishna or Rama or Jesus or whatever it is, the reality of whatever form it may be is what is shining in our heart as I. As Krishna says in the Gita, aham atma gudakesha, that is in chapter 10 verse 20, he says, I am Atma in every living being. That means Krishna is our own reality. So that applies to any name or form of God. In whatever name or form God may appear, the ultimate reality of God is within ourselves. So the best way of worshipping God or expressing our love for God is to turn within and to subside back into the heart. That is the best. But we are still all have strong inclination to rise and go outwards. So long as we have inclination to rise and go outwards, it is good to hold on to an external form of God, because that external form of God, by having love for that external form, that will give us the love to turn back within to know the true form of God. Because God is infinite. Can the infinite be limited to any form? So though he may appear in a form, no form of God can be the ultimate reality of God. But that doesn't mean we have to, as Bhagavan pointed out, people say, oh, God is formless, you should only worship the formless God. Even the very idea that God is formless is an idea, and an idea is a mental form. So we cannot know God as formless without knowing ourselves as formless. So long as we take ourselves to be a form, it's appropriate to take God to be a form. But it's important to understand that that form that we worship is not the ultimate truth of God. God is not limited to that particular form. God is not limited to the body of Bhagavan Ramana. It's not limited to even to a vast Aruṇācala hill. It's not limited to Krishna or Rama. That is, these are all, though God appears in these forms, ultimately the purpose why God appears in any form is to tell us to turn within. Not everyone gets that message. So people say, my God alone is the real God. Krishna alone is God. Krishna is above all other gods. Everyone else is demigods. Or Jesus, so only through Jesus you can get salvation. So all these different religious sects arise because of people not understanding why God appears in a form. God appears in a form partly to give us a crutch, something to hold on to, some support, external support. But primarily, the primary purpose of the external form of God is to turn our mind within. There's a story. Once one Muslim came to Bhagavan and said, isn't it true that God is formless? Bhagavan said, yes, God is formless. Then isn't it wrong to worship God in form? Then Bhagavan asked, are you a form? No, I'm not a form. I'm a formless soul, the Muslim said. But you take yourself to be a form and see how you worship this form as yourself. Every day you get up, you have a bath, you put on nice clean clothes, you take nice tasty food. That's exactly what is being done in the temple. They give a bath to the idol. They give nice clean clothes and garlands and everything, and they offer food. So it's so long as we are attached to take this body to be I, it is appropriate to worship God in form. But we shouldn't. That's okay up to a certain point, but that is worshipping God in form is not is a means, not an end. It's a means to focus our love. But ultimately, when our love is focused on that external form, as Bhagavan said, that will purify the mind. And when the mind is pure, then the pure mind will understand God cannot be limited. Though God appears in that form, he cannot be limited to that form. The reality of God must be infinite. So who am I other than God? As Bhagavan says in verse I think it's 7 of Aruṇācala Patikam, when all these forms are nothing other than you, who is this I who rises as another? Basically is what Bhagavan is asking there. And the final prayer is, show yourself planting your feet on the head of this, on his head. That means on the head of this rising ego. In other words, you shine forth as my own reality and thereby crush this ego. So, but in order to turn our mind within, in order to have love to turn our mind within, we require a certain amount of purity of mind. And that purity of mind is the most effective way to gain that is by worshipping the name and form, until the point where we come to understand that God cannot be something other than ourselves. And then when we understand that God is the reality of ourselves, then the love to turn within will arise. I hope that's an adequate answer to that question.
I'm sure it is. The next question is, can the ego sense its annihilation? And what will it do then? And what should our action be?
Ego must exist in order to know itself. So it cannot know it's ceasing to exist. When ego ceases to exist, in fact, ego ceasing to exist is, ego doesn't exist even when it seems to exist. So when ego sees its own reality, it sees that there never was any such thing as ego. If you see us, to use a crude analogy, if you see a rope and mistake it to be a snake, that snake there seems to be a snake there. But if you look at it very carefully, what do you see? Oh, it's not a snake, it's a rope. So does in the case of that analogy, because the rope is obviously an object, the analogy doesn't fit perfectly. But the point is, merely seeing what it actually is leads to the disappearance of what it seemed to be. So the snake will disappear only when we see the rope as it is. Likewise, ego will disappear only when we see ourselves as we actually are. When we see ourselves as we actually are, it will be clear that we have always been as we actually are. So there's no one there to know the disappearance of ego, because ego exists only in the view of ego. So when ego ceases to exist, there's no we don't see, we cannot see the destruction of ego, because ego cannot see its own destruction. And in the view of what we actually are, there never was any ego in the first place. So long as we continue to rise as ego, so long as we seem to have a separate existence, we need to continue investigating ourselves. When we see ourselves as we actually are, ego will be swallowed, and what will then remain is what was always there, without any change. So self-realization or enlightenment is not a happening. It is a cessation of all happening. It is the ending of all happenings. But it's not even the ending of all happenings. It's the clarity that when nothing ever happened in the first place. There never was any rising of ego. Since there never was any rising of ego, there never was any destruction of ego. That's why Bhagavan says it is beyond bondage and liberation. Liberation has a meaning only so long as bondage seems to be real. But when we see that we were never in bondage, then that state is it's beyond bond. That's in verse 29 of 29 of Upadeshundya. Bhagavan describes it as that state, the state of supreme bliss that is beyond bondage and liberation. The devoid of bondage and liberation. So long as there seems to be bondage, liberation seems to be a worthy goal. But when we see we were never in bondage, then since we were never in bondage, there's no such thing as liberation. Or liberation is eternal, is to put it another way.
The next question is, in one of your responses on nishkama karma, that is desireless action, you said that carrying out action for the love of God alone and by not getting attached to the result, this will purify the mind. You also said that Bhagwan said that japa is higher than puja and dhyana is higher than japa. My question is, for the millions of people who are not accustomed to japa, puja and dhyana, can they not dedicate most, if not all of their mundane actions that they perform in ordinary life for the love of God, considering life as a doer, as one continuous stream of action considering life as a doer is one continuous stream of action. For instance, when I play sports, can I not play for the love of God instead of getting entangled in the outcome of losing or winning? Would that be a valid form of nishkama karma?
Yes, that is. This is referring to what Bhagavan says in verses 3 to 7 of Upadeshundya. In verse 3, he says, Nishkarmiya karma, done for God, will purify the mind and show the way to liberation. He then goes on to, done for God implies done for the love of God. Then he goes on to talk about it, talk about this in more detail. He says, puja, japa, and this is certain. Puja, japa, and dhyana are actions of body, speech, and mind. And in this order, each is superior to the previous one. Then that's verse 4. Then in verse 5, he says, worshipping, considering all the 8 forms to be forms of God, is good worship of God. All the 8 forms, that is referring to an idea in Shaiva Siddhanta. That idea is that God is all the 5 elements, that is space, air, space, fire, air, water, and earth. That means everything that constitutes this material world, but also very subtle elements that constitute the mind. All these elements, and in Shaiva Siddhanta, I think they usually say sun, moon, and jiva are forms of God. Krishna in the Gita refers to a similar thing. He says all these 5 elements, and I think this is just someone referred me to this verse today. I think it's maybe verse 3 of chapter 7. He says all these 5 elements and mind, intellect, and ego. These are all these that I appear in all these forms, or something like that. So there's almost exact correspondence. If we take the moon to be an analogy for mind and sun to be an analogy for intellect, it fits exactly with the Shaiva Siddhanta idea. But the main idea is everything ultimately is a form of God. So if whatever you do it for the love of God, considering everything to be God, that is good worship of God. For example, if we take everything to be a form of God, we should treat everything with reverence and respect. The way we are treating our planet nowadays, that is the amount of damage our activities are causing to this world, all the global warming and pollution and all these things. If we have real respect for everything as a form of God, we will try to live a life causing minimum harm to the world. If you do that just for the love of God, because you consider everything to be a form of God, that is a good worship of God. As far as sport is concerned, I'm not quite sure how you're going to play that, but maybe. I mean, the main thing is that whatever you do without expecting any result, but just for the love of God. Because if you're love for God, you treat everything with respect. So Bhagavan says, if you worshipping, considering all the 8 forms to be forms of God, is good worship of God. So Bhagavan gives a very broad definition there of puja. He's not just limiting it to ritualistic worship in a temple. You can do puja in any way, so long as you consider everything to be a form of God and treat everything accordingly. For example, if you see a hungry person and you give them food, you shouldn't feel, oh, I'm superior, I'm giving this poor person food. You should feel, God has given me this, God has appeared in this form and given me the opportunity to serve him, so I give this food. So a lot of this is to do with the attitude with which we do things.
The next question is, Krishnamurti often spoke in the 3rd person, Michael. Would you consider Krishnamurti as someone who had dissolved his ego or had valuable insights to offer? Did he ever have any interactions with Bhagwan?
No, I don't think he ever came to Bhagavan. I don't know. A lot of the things he says, I'm not here to judge other people, but as far as the teachings of Krishnamurti are concerned, it seems to me there's a lot of lack of clarity in some of the things he said. For example, once someone showed me a passage in which Krishnamurti said, thoughts come first, not the thinker. It's thoughts that create the thinker. That, on the face of it, that makes no sense, because you can't have, the thinker means not only the one who is forming the thoughts, but also one who is aware of the thoughts. You can't have thoughts without a thinker, without someone who, there's someone who, that is what is thinking. Thinking is forming ideas, forming thoughts in our mind and in our awareness. So we form thoughts by being aware of them. So without that awareness, without a subject, you can't have any objects. So a lot of things Krishnamurti said really make no sense. And Bhagavan is very clear on this. The thinker is ego, or what Bhagavan often referred to ego as the thought called I. He said of all thoughts, the first is the thought I. Only after this rises do all other thoughts rise. So Bhagavan is very, very clear there. And what Bhagavan says is very obvious, very logical. What Krishnamurti says is not at all, it makes no sense, really. So I have never been impressed by anything. I mean, I haven't read a lot of Krishnamurti, but whatever people have shown me from time to time, and it always seems to me to be somehow lacking in clarity, lacking in a lot of the things he says just don't seem to make any sense. But I'm not here to judge who, I mean, I can't judge the man. I can only judge what he says. And a lot of the things he says just, firstly, it makes no sense to say that thoughts come before the thinker. And it's also diametrically opposed to what Bhagavan teaches us. So whether we judge it from the perspective of Bhagavan's teachings or from the perspective of simple common sense, it makes no, what Krishnamurti says often makes no sense.
Oh, Michael, I just had a very quick question on this, because it's something which is there in a very ancient Indian philosophy, sort of the Vedic thing, where, according to at least the scholars, when they talk about cognitive activity, any kind of cognitive activity of the senses, body, and so on, all of which is cognitive for them, they say, or even of the deities, the sort of the impersonal sensory powers, cognitive powers, whatever, they say that that making is finding, or finding is making. It happens at the same time, in a sense, that you cannot have one without the other. And when you just said this thing that, which of course Bhagavan has said, that the I thought comes first, and then the I thought is of course the first establishment of existence, of identity, and so on. That is a kind of making and finding, at the same time, I guess.
We create everything just by rising as ego. That is the forming of thoughts and being aware of the thoughts is simultaneous, because thoughts are just images or impressions, whatever we call it, appearing in our awareness. So they have no existence independent of our awareness of them. We produce them by being aware of them. This is what is called drishti shrishti vada. By the mere act of perceiving, we are creating.
We could say that we visualize and substantialize, or bring into existence at the same time, so to speak.
Yeah.
The next question, are we boosting someone's ego when we congratulate them or say, well done? It makes me think twice before I say that.
Yeah, I think in ordinary social discourse, it's good to appreciate others. For example, if a child does well at school, if they pass their exam, it's good to appreciate them. Sometimes we can encourage people by appreciating the good that they do. That's okay in an ordinary worldly sense, but from a spiritual point of view, a lot of in religion, there's a great tendency to idolize certain people, certain saints or gurus or whatever, and put them on a pedestal. We need to be very careful of this. Firstly, that unless the one we are idolizing has completely annihilated ego, it's very dangerous for them. And we also need to be, but we can't totally avoid, I mean, for example, sometimes people may praise us. We can't stop people praising us. We can't stop people appreciating us, but we can inwardly, we shouldn't be deluded by the praise of others. That is, because I talk a lot about Bhagavan's teachings, I somehow tend to pick up a lot of we can say reflected glory or something. People appreciate me wrongly because all I'm talking about is what Bhagavan is saying. I'm not worthy of any appreciation. But when people do appreciate me, it would be very easy for me to fall into the trap of believing them and boosting my ego. But Bhagavan saves me, or at least to some extent, he saves me by making it very clear to me that I am not at all worthy of whatever, however much people praise me. I know I'm not worthy of that. That is a great saving grace. Because if I believed all that people said, then it would be very dangerous because it would boost the ego. But when I know that it's however it may appear to others, I'm not worthy of any praise. That is a saving grace. But many people on the spiritual path fall into this trap of letting others praise them and believing their praise. That is very, very dangerous. So only Bhagavan's grace can protect us from that. So as a general rule, we shouldn't be, what we are seeking to know is the reality of ourself. So we are trying to go beyond the personal identity that we now seem to have. So we shouldn't, it's not good for us also to indulge too much in praise of others, because that's giving reality to the outward form rather than the inward reality. This person is not what we actually are. So when this person is not what we actually are, the saints and gurus that we see, they are not that, they are no more that person when we are this person. So we shouldn't, that is hagiography, the writing the lives of saints and dwelling on the lives of saints. This may be useful at a certain level, but we have to go beyond this.
The next question. In all the world religions, traits such as anger, greed, lust, attachment, sloth are seen as barriers to truth. They are called the 7 deadly sins in Christianity, thieves and enemies of the mind in Hinduism and Sikhism, hindrances in Buddhism, and so on. Did Bhagwan ever talk about these negative mental states and whether they are barriers to self-investigation if one easily gets swept away by any one or more of them?
Yeah, I'm sure Bhagavan did sometimes refer to these, and definitely, I mean, we understand his teachings. He often talks about the danger of desire, and desire is said to be the root of all these other ones. But the main focus on Bhagavan's teaching, to whom is their desire, to whom is their anger, to whom is their sloth? Bhagavan is going back to the very root. All these 7 deadly sins, or the 6 inner enemies, or whatever we call them, these are all only for ego. It's only when we rise as ego that we have desire, that we fall prey to anger and greed and Loba, Moha, Matsari, I can't remember what the list is, but all these things, delusion, Moha is delusion, all these arise only when we arise as ego. So Bhagavan was always focusing on the root cause. These are all symptoms, we can say. So long as we rise as ego, we are susceptible to desire, greed, anger, and all these things. So Bhagavan wanted us to cut at the very root. Because if we try and curb these other things, it's a bit like cutting the leaves and branches. Sometimes you do need to prune back the leaves and branches to a certain extent in order to get at the root. But we shouldn't be endlessly trying to focusing on cutting the leaves and branches, because they'll continue sprouting until we cut the root. So Bhagavan's main focus was on the root cause of all these problems, which is ego.
The next one is, does the power of Prakriti or the energy of Pran have its own will to exist?
It all exists in whose view? In the view of ego. So ultimately, it all comes back to ego. Nothing exists independent of ego. As Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Ulladu, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ego itself is everything. Therefore, investigating what this ego is giving up everything. So long as we rise as ego, we project a body, identify that body as I, and so there seems to be Prakriti and all these things. But none of these things have any independent existence.
The next one is, does surrender include surrendering to the unknown?
What Bhagavan is not concerned with the unknown. Bhagavan is concerned with what is ever known. What we all know always is I am. But now as ego, we instead of knowing just I am, we know I am this body. So what is to be surrendered is this false awareness, I am this body. To what is it to be surrendered? It can be surrendered only to the underlying reality, which is I am, which is ever known. But though we always know I am, we don't know I am as it is, because it's obscured by this superimposed awareness, I am this body. So let's not worry about the unknown. Let's focus on what is ever known, which is I am.
I think, Steve, you wanted to ask a question? Steve Palmer? Yeah.
Right. Okay. Sorry. So my question was, it was going back to Vartist's question earlier. I'd had some difficulty with that, and my current way of looking at it was probably influenced by what I'd learned from Buddhist teachers, which was everything is impermanent. So I looked at the dream as, even science will say that, not that I know that much about it, but that everything is impermanent. Everybody here right now, the blood has been pumping around through the whole of the meeting. The cells have been changing. And also, if you look at it at different levels, there's the relative world, having to get our Tesco shopping, and then there's everything is changing all the time. So impermanence seemed to me to be the easiest way to look at this being a dream, that things can seem permanent on one level. My wife seems permanent to me. I see her every day, but we're both obviously changing, and different moods, different, your body's changing, you're digesting food. Nothing is still, except I suppose you could say I am is still. And as I also had some difficulties thinking the consciousness was creating this whole dream, but if I saw it as impermanent, it somehow felt something, at least intellectually, that was helpful. And I wonder if Michael could talk on that.
Yes. Bhagavans often used to say there are three three defining characteristics of what is real. What is real is eternal, unchanging, and self-shining. What he means by what is real is what actually exists. What he means by unreal is what doesn't actually exist, even if it seems to exist. So anything that is not permanent is not real. Anything that changes is not real. Because if something changes, it's one thing at one time and another thing at another time. So change involves the once we were young children, now we are getting on in life. We have changed in so many ways. So we are not the child that we once were. There may be some features of that child that is still here in this old person, but most things have changed in so many ways. So what is changing is not permanent. So what is permanent is not real. The other important definition is self-shining. Self-shining means it knows itself by its own light of awareness. So anything that doesn't know itself is an object. And the objects appear only in the view of the subject, so they're not real. Even the subject is ego. Ego seems to be self-shining, but it is not, because ego shines by the light it derives from the its underlying reality, which is pure awareness. So, and ego is also impermanent. It appears in waking and dream, it disappears in sleep, so it's impermanent. There is a very important verse in Bhagavad Gita, and this is one of the verses that Bhagavan has translated into Tamil in Bhagavad Gita Saram. That is chapter 2, verse 16. What Krishna says there is no, for the non-existent, there is no existence. For the existent, there is no non-existence. What that implies is, if something doesn't exist, it never exists. You can't have something, but it doesn't exist for some time and then comes into existence and then ceases to exist. If something comes into existence and ceases to exist, it doesn't really exist. What really exists must always exist. So there's no non-existence for it. Bhagavan used to say this in a very simple way. If something exists at one time and not at another time, it doesn't actually exist even when it seems to exist. Actually exist means real. So anything that is temporary, anything that comes into existence and ceases to exist is not real. Though it seems to exist, it doesn't actually exist. So, as you say, everything is impermanent. The only thing that is permanent is the underlying reality, Satchit, pure being awareness, which is what shines as I am. So I am alone is permanent. I am is the one thing that we know in all three states. Now we are aware I am. In dream we were aware I am. In sleep we are aware I am. Everything else appears only in waking and dream. In sleep there's nothing other than I am. So I am alone is real. So in Buddhism, as you say, they put a lot of emphasis on this, everything is a nitya. But in Vedanta, it is emphasized, yes, everything is a nitya, impermanent, but one thing is nitya, that is ourself. That's why the first qualification for following the path of Vedanta is in many texts it is said, nitya anitya vastu viveka, distinguishing what is permanent from what is impermanent. And what is permanent is only our own being, the awareness I am.
I find that very helpful in terms of thinking of the world as a dream.
Yes.
Because it seems quite obvious to me that day and night changes, everything is changing.
Yeah.
So it seems the easiest way
Yeah.
for my own inclinations or vasanas
Yeah.
to see that this is impermanent.
And
so thank you for that answer.
Our whole life in this world is one dream. That is our present life. Your life as Steve, my life as Michael. The whole life is one dream. It's interrupted by periods of sleep, and the sleep is interrupted by periods of other dreams. But those dreams are dreams within a dream. So the whole of this life is a dream. So long as we are dreaming this dream, it all seems so real. But when death comes, it will be clear it's as unreal as every dream that we have at night.
Could I say my final thing would be, could we almost equate the word dream with impermanent?
Yeah.
Are they almost interchangeable?
Yes, all dreams are impermanent, and everything that is impermanent is just a dream, is just a product of the dreaming mind, the dreaming ego. The dreamer is ego. And ego itself is impermanent.
I find that very helpful. Thank you.
Right.
Steve, just say quickly, because you were interested in the Buddhist thing and I was teaching it, that for the Buddha, I mean, there were the three marks of our everyday experience. The first being anatma, which is no self, but what he meant was no ego, and self in the sense of something substantial. There's no individuality either of myself or of anything else. We just fake it by our clinging. The second is anitya, impermanence, and the third is suffering or dukkha, and these two things lead to it. And then later he talks about all of this being like sort of bubbles, being like a dream, being whatever, a phantasm. You know, that's what it is. It's because in essence, once you know the truth or whatever, you know, it seems dreamlike. And he does talk about the luminosity of awareness at some point. There's not too much of a stress on the nitya part. And I think a lot of it has to do with our tendency to substantialize because, this big God or this substantive Atma or something like that. And I think this, to try and avoid clinging to something and substantializing it, there is this emphasis, which can have its own problems. Anyway, that was just very quickly, just occurred to me. So, okay, next question. So the next question is really a comment which came up, and it says that Michael clarified this for me a while ago, but people might find this comment helpful. He said it's not Robert's ego, but ego's Robert. Okay, so that's, I think, actually quite a useful, very useful. Sanjay, you wanted to ask a question? Sanjay Lohia?
Yes. So, sir, my question is, in verse 14 of Ulladinarpadu, Bhagavan talks about if the first person exists, second and third persons will also exist, and then he goes on. So why does Bhagavan demarcate between the second and third persons? Because he could just say it's all objects. What is the practical significance of dividing the objects between second and third persons?
Not much significance. I mean, we can give a meaning to it, but it's Bhagavan always talks about munile padake, second and third persons. He bunches them together. If we want to distinguish them, in Tamil, the word for second person is munile. Munile means what stands in front. And the word for third person is padake, which means what spreads out. So what is immediately presented to us, whether to our senses or within the mind, we can interpret it in different ways. What is immediately presented is second person. What is far away is third person. Far away in either space or time or anything that we are not directly cognizing or directly experiencing. So we can take it in two ways. We can take it, all that we are now perceiving is second person. Everything else is third person. So what we now see on the computer screen in front of us, that is second person. But we may think about other things. We may think about Russia and Ukraine or Israel or Africa or China or all these thoughts. These are third person because they're removed. They're not under our immediate experience. That's one way of bifurcating it. Another way of bifurcating it is to say whatever we are aware of in our mind is second person. The world that we assume exists out there is third person. That's another way we can take it, but it really doesn't matter. The point is, Bhagavan says second and third persons. That is whether it's immediately known or at a distance, whether we know it through direct sensory perception or whether we just remember about it or whatever. It's all dependent on the first person. So the second sentence there in that verse 14 is the important one. He says, if the second person, if the first person ceases to exist through one's investigation of the reality of the first person, second and third persons will come to an end. He gives us a very nice clue there. He said, if the first person ceases to exist by one's investigation of the reality of the first person, the first person is the is ego, the false awareness, I am this body. That which is aware of itself as I am this body, that is the first person. The reality of the first person is the fundamental awareness I am. So what Bhagavan implies there is what we have to investigate is not ego as such, but the reality of ego, which is the underlying awareness I am. And if we investigate that underlying reality, ego will thereby cease to exist. Ego, the first person, will cease to exist, and hence everything else, the second and third persons, will also cease to exist. And what will then remain shining, that is our real nature. What then remains shining as one, not divided as first person, second person, third person, subject, object, or there is no such division. It is one and indivisible. It's a very beautiful verse, that one.
So, sir, that means the division between the second and third persons is not of much significance.
Not of much significance. Second and third persons are all anatma. We are to do Atma-vichara, not Atma-vichara. If we want to philosophize, we can philosophize as much as we want, but we should philosophize only, that is what Bhagavan has taught us. It's really useful philosophy. That is, philosophy is useful to the extent to which it directs our attention back towards the first person. We can go on analyzing other things ad infinitum. That's what scientists are doing. That's what philosophers are doing. They've been doing it for hundreds of years, and they'll continue doing it for hundreds of years. There's no end to the research on second and third persons. That's what's symbolized in the story of the origin of Aruṇācala. Brahma, who is intellect, takes the form of a swan and flies upwards. That represents the outward going, investigating the second and third persons. And so long as we take God to be a second or third person, we still, our mind is going outwards. That's why Advaita teaches us God is not a second or third person. God is the reality of the first person. God is what is shining in our heart as I.
So, sir,
this reality of the first person is not only the reality of the first person, it's also the reality of the second and third persons. Because the second and third persons depend for their seeming existence on the first person. And the first person depends for its seeming existence on the underlying reality, which is that Satchit, pure being awareness, I am.
Got it, sir. So, sir, that means this body is a second person.
Yeah.
Body, since we can directly perceive it.
Yeah, you can call it the second person, but I mean, yes, but we can analyze it like that, but that's not important. That's the main point.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
Bruce,
you can go ahead with the other questions, Shalini. It's okay.
You don't want to ask today?
I mean, I can say it, but I think okay, so I had this, I was making an analogy with the railroad tracks, right? Okay, and when you're on, like if you're on the train and you're looking down at the tracks themselves are parallel, always parallel. Otherwise, the train wouldn't work. Okay, but if you look at the distance, the lines of the tracks converge. Okay, so when you're looking outwards, the lines converge. Okay, but in reality, they never converge, else it wouldn't function. So what I wrote or in the chat was it's a mathematical term, but it's very simple. It's non-concurring lines, which means parallel lines, concur only in illusions or dreams.
Yeah.
That's all I was getting at.
Yeah. It's all a matter of perspective.
Exactly. That's exactly.
So long as we look outwards, we are not seeing things as they actually are. If we want to see this world as it actually is, look within.
Exactly.
We will see the underlying reality of ourselves, which is the underlying reality of the world. And that is I am.
Thank you. Thanks for today.
Right.
Our next question. The question is, Michael mentioned that the heart refers to awareness of I am. So when we speak of softening or hardening the heart, how does this tie in with awareness?
Okay, the word heart is used in many different senses in different contexts. The basic meaning of the word heart is center. The ultimate center is Satchit, the pure awareness I am. But we also use heart when we talk about hard-hearted or soft-hearted, their heart is referring to the will. Oh, come on, have a heart. That means be kind, and that kindness, it comes from a will. That is, if we're kind, it's because we've got we want what is good for everyone. If we're hard-hearted, we don't care about anyone else. We care only about ourselves. So our will is focused only on our interests. We also use the word heart often to refer to the emotions. We say someone is broken-hearted. There it's referring to the emotions. So emotions are even more, that is if we refer to the emotions as the heart, then the heart of that heart is the will. And the heart of the will is ego. And the heart of ego is the ultimate heart, pure awareness. So the word heart, not only in English, but in other languages also, is used in so many different senses. But one of the words in Tamil for heart is ullam. Ullam can mean heart in the sense, ullam often means mind. It can also mean, Bhagavan often uses it to mean heart in the sense of the ultimate heart. Same with aham. Aham also is a Tamil word but means heart. One of the meanings of aham is home. Because a home is the center of your life, it's centered around the home. So words don't have a fixed meaning. We need to understand the meaning of words from the context in which they're used. So the word heart is used in many different senses, and the sense in which it's used is determined by the context. If we talk about a heart surgeon, they're not operating on the emotions, they're not operating on the will, they're certainly not operating on the ultimate reality, they're operating on a fleshy organ in the body, which, because it pumps blood all around the body, it seems to be the center of the body. It's got a central function in the body. So these are words. Words don't have fixed meaning. Many words, the precise meaning of a word depends on the context. But there's often a logic between using the same word in different contexts. If we consider the word heart means center or core, then that's a relative term. There's the core, and then the core of the core, and the core of the core, and the core of the core. The ultimate heart is pure awareness, Satchit, pure being awareness.
That was very helpful, Michael. The last question, could Mike, and this is about a YouTube video of yours, and sort of the person would like you to elaborate on that a little bit. Said, could Michael comment more on precise present moment and space per se? Additional commentary to what he has already said on the YouTube video, so as not to be repetitive. Sometimes when he speaks, it triggers aha moments.
Right. Okay. Now is the present moment. Here is the present place. What makes them present is the presence of ourself. So where we are present, we refer to that place as here. We feel that place is here. The point in time where we are now, the point in time that we are now experiencing, we experience as now because we are here. So it's our presence that we superimpose upon a certain point in space and a certain point in time and call them the present place and the present moment. Everything that happens in the present moment. But that present moment in which everything happens is not the precise present moment. The precise present moment, that is, if we analyze time, if we try and break time down, if we take one moment, a moment before is past, a moment ahead is future. So if we try to drill down to get to the precise present moment, the present moment is an infinitesimal interface between past and future. In that infinitesimal interface, there is no duration. It's only, you need to expand the present moment to get a duration. So everything that happens in that is, time is an illusion. So the present moment seems to be a gap between the past and the future, and only in that gap things are happening. But that is not the precise present moment, because things can happen only in a duration of time. So it's only in that gap that things can happen. If we go to the precise present moment, that infinitely fine interface between the past and the future, there's no, that moment has no, it has no duration. So since it has no duration, nothing can happen in it. So in that precise present moment, what we find is not doing or happening, only being, our own being. Likewise, the present place where this body, because we now identify with this body, where this body is here. But if we try to drill down to what is it that makes this place seem to be present, or what is it that makes this body seem to be I, we have to drill down, leave aside the body and go to that fundamental awareness I that now seems to be attached to this body. But what is that I? So we have to leave aside the adjuncts, the body and mind and all these adjuncts, and hold on to the pure I. When we hold on to the pure I, ego will thereby subside, and we subside back into the eternally present, into the eternal presence, the presence of pure being, which is beyond time and beyond space. The one thing that is always present, always here and now, is I. So if we want to know the ultimate truth of time and space, we have to investigate this I. The reality of I is the reality of time, space, and everything else.
Michael, that was really wonderful. That was excellent. So actually, what you're saying basically is that duration is a conceptual construction of the mind or the ego, as is location.
Yeah.
And in that sense, it's a fabrication.
Yeah.
But thank you so much.
Ultimately, time and space are unreal.
Yeah. They're just fabrications. They're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
fiction. Kind of. Yeah. And thank you for these questions very much. I mean, I really, it was, yes, as somebody's written in the chat box, this is profound. So, yes. So thank you all very much.
Bhagavan's teachings are profound.
Well, Michael, thank you for conveying Bhagavan's teachings.